Hey, how's it going, guys? And welcome back. Well, airframe's all been checked for filler spots and any other spots that have been that I overlooked. Everything's taken care of. So where I am now is I was updating the F-15E. Now these are actually pretty important because the actual aircraft itself was constantly updated throughout its life, and there was a lot of things that were done to it. First, we'll start off with the nose gear, which is right here. Now, the nose gear of the F-15Es, or the F-15 in general, is actually pretty simple, but because of the heavier weight of the F-15E, and also it started getting nasty vibrations in the nose area, they added a shimmy damper, which is what I added here. This is actually the first of many updates, which is right here. This actually reduces the oscillations and vibrations of the nose gear. Reason, as I said before, reason being is because due to the heavier weight, it started having trouble in that area. Hence the shimmy dampener. Next step was the wing pylons. I actually added new missile rails. In the early 90s, the F-15E started getting updated in the air-to-air department, so they added the AIM-120 as well as the AIM-9 to it. They only did them in pairs at first, so it was not uncommon to see AIM-9 missile rail and then the newer LU-128 launch rails. A lot of these parts I pilfered from the Academy kit, since actually the Academy F-15C MSIP, which I started added to the F-15E. Here's how it looks here. By the mid to the late 90s, they actually had these rails at all times. Now, these missile rails are a little on the short side. This is kit provided, but it's really no big deal for me. You could try, if you wanted to, you could try to update them. I shouldn't say update. Stretch them out a little longer. Me, I'm just going to leave them as is. Now the reason for the bigger rails is the AIM-120 AMRAAM, also known as Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, is a little heavier than the AIM-9 Sidewinder. But if they try to put them on the fuselage pylons, it takes up more space for bombs. That's why the rails. So once those are all said and done, that's all ready. Now, onto the airframe. Now, the airframe itself required a little bit of extensive modifications. For example, I started off with the GPS dot right here. This is actually added during the 90s since global positioning systems started becoming a big thing. The reason why they added the GPS dot is because they started using a GPS device on regular bombs here, like the JDAM right here, and the smaller one, which I will grab in a little bit, which is right here. This didn't really appear until the early 2000s. This appeared during the mid to late 90s. Also, this is basically a poor man's precision-guided munition, those weapons right there. So instead of using more expensive laser-guided device, they started using GPS systems, which made these bombs far more accurate. Hence, that's why the GPS dot right there. This was a pretty simple modification. I didn't steal this from any kit. Basically, I took a piece of sprue from the sprue tree, cut it down to size, glued it on, let it sit for the day, and then whatever excess, I sanded it down to get it as flush as possible. Still got a little bit of cleaning to do around that surrounding area, but it's a pretty easy fix, so problem solved on that. As for the pylons, for the conformal fuel pallets, as you can see here, this was actually a pretty simple conversion. I was going to replace them with a spare set from the Academy kit, but I chose not to. So I modified them. Not really modified them. I just basically converted them to the newer type. Now, the reason for the newer type is because the older style started developing cracks in the pylon itself a lot quicker than expected. So in 1999, they started replacing it with this style. Now, this style isn't as raked as the older style. It's more perpendicular to the ground, which also reduces cracks or fatigue. So I sanded them down. I sanded down the angle, and then I rounded out the front so it could be just as aerodynamic. Really didn't take much. Like I said before, you can always replace them if you want to. I chose not to. I simply modified them. Next step, I started working on these two here. This is the ECM setup. Now, early production models had them more rounded on this end, but later or converted productions, I should say updates, changed into this style. This is actually very common on the Israeli F-15E, also known as the F-15I Ram. They had this right off the bat, as well as the shimmy dampener and whatever else. These were actually, it's still the same setup, it's just a different style. I'm not too sure about it. Early production blocks had these. The later ones started coming out with these. This was pretty simple. Same thing. Cut off the older ends, glue the new ones in. I just got to fair them in a little bit because I still got to clean up the tail section, which isn't going to require much. And anything else to add? Yeah. I also started updating the antenna section. However, I had to do my reference on the antennas because it varied from production block to production block. For example, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, when they first acquired the F-15E, was simple as is. They did replace some of the antennas. They also did some updates, whereas Alaskan Air Command, Mountain Home, even Lakenheath had the more updated, newer production block F-15Es. So I cut off the two here, put one here, also from the Academy kit. This was very easy. This update work was actually very, very easy for me to work on. Give me a few seconds. I'm trying to figure out. I also updated the lantern setup, and I'm trying to figure out where I put it. I'll find it eventually. Hey, there it is. Now, I'm not too sure if I got this accurate or not. I'm hoping I did. I still got to look up some reference material. So if you're following me and you're trying to update your Revell-Monogram F-15E, make sure you have a lot of reference on hand. And check your antenna array setup. Now, if you got the Wolfpack D resin set, they show pictures of the antenna array, and they're all going to vary from production block to production block. Some have, for example, I left this on. Some may have this style. Some may have that style. Some may have it a whole new style. Sometimes they don't have it at all. Check your references accordingly. Let's see, anything else? I also added the antenna, the pitted probes, and the here and here. These were pretty easy to glue on. I ended up breaking the door off in a process. Fortunately, it broke off cleanly, no massive mess, so I can glue this back on once all said and done. Also makes it easier for me to prime and paint the airframe itself. But as you can tell here, a lot of work was involved. Speaking of more work involved, I finally glued on the CFTs here, as you can see here. These were probably the most difficult part of the kit, because they were a little warped, so I had to glue them one section at a time. Originally, I was using a Tamiya extra thin cement, liquid cement. Didn't quite work out because it's got a slower setting time, so I had to resort to the 10X7R, which requires more speed. The only problem is with this stuff is it bonds a little bit differently, so I was worried about having excess plastic ooze out. And this could be real difficult unless you get to remove that excess plastic if you do not have files or you're not careful with the sanding stick. I took my time, took care of them, and they're all set and ready to go. Now, if you're working on later production blocks of the F-15E, they do have scoops for the newer style engines. I shouldn't say newer style, the newer engines, which require more air. I did my reference accordingly, checked to see if they had them. No, since I'm doing a Seymour Johnson bird, Air Force Base bird, I didn't need those scoops. And even the photo show, I didn't need them. So I left them off as is. I'll show you which ones they are as soon as I find them. These are actually the ones here. Glue these together, and then depending on the production block of the Pratt & Whitney engine, or even if you're doing GE, you use these. These are the ones you use. I didn't use them. So I left them alone, as I repeat myself like an idiot, as is. The last update I did, since I'm doing an Iraqi Freedom bird, I cut off the lantern pod on this, as you can see here. I cut it off with a razor saw, sanded down any excess, and I added the adapter. Now, the reason for the adapter is because they started using along with the lantern system, they started using a newer type pod, which instead of using a lantern, they went with a sniper pod. The sniper pod first appeared back in 2004-2005 time frame. The reason for this over the lantern is because better resolution, sharper image, and it was better for more precise attacks on ground targets. And also it's radically different. Hence, that's why they added the modification, as you can see here. This is just, I didn't glue it yet, but you can tell that's what, for the adapter. That's why. I got everything done up. Next step is going to be priming is going to be priming, filling. Priming, painting the airframe. I still got odds and ends I got to wrap up on. I did do the landing gear, by the way. Now, I mentioned about the landing gear being the shimmy dampener on the nose. This is the landing gear for the kit itself. It's a very simple setup. You figure the F-15 would have something more complicated. No, not really. This is the landing gear right here. It's basically a very simple setup. Very plain. It was very easy to glue. Now, most people will paint it first and then add it on. I decided to assemble it first and then paint it. So this way, give me a few seconds, I lost my train of thought. The reason why I did this is because it makes life easier for me to paint and less hassle. Everything's set and ready. Now I'm going to be moving on to the next step very, very soon. And I'm also going to be working on the canopy a little bit more. I already told you about the clear part. This is the other half of the canopy. This is gluing this to the canopy itself is going to require a lot of finesse and a lot of careful timing. If you're not very good with liquid cement or regular glue, you can always go with an Elmer's glue, which dries clear, but it takes longer to dry, and makes this a little bit more delicate. I also got to add another piece here, and I got to work on the cockpit a little bit more. Or add the rest of the parts once I get everything taken care of, which I will explain in the next video. But this is what I got for now. Oh, I forgot to mention the ordnance. The ordnance has already been selected. As you can tell, this is one half of the lantern pods. I've had these sitting around, so I'll be using these. This is already painted. This is already done. AIM-9 sidewinders and AIM-120s. Also, I'll be using a pair of laser guided bombs, this style JDAM, and this style. Now, I may add more JDAMs, or I might use a different style JDAM. Basically, the bombs right here, but still open to speculation, so we'll see what happens. But this is what I got for now, and I will talk to you guys again soon, and hopefully I'll have another update where I last left off. Happy modeling, take it easy, talk to you again soon.